Hello everybody, welcome. It's week 4 of our portrait painting course. So we've been batting along at a hang of a speed already. I can't believe it's past the halfway mark. So still lots and lots to learn. You've been doing really great. I love the studies that you guys have been doing on the and posting for me on the forum to look at. It's wonderful work. I think what we're going to do now is let's do a little bit of an overview of the mistakes that I have been seeing from last week's math study. So if Dennis can zoom over through to the canvas for us. Okay. The biggest mistakes that I've seen is in the corner of the mouth. Guys, you must really make sure that you get this dark, and even if it doesn't really appear dark in your photograph, use your artist license and darken it up, especially here on the teeth. Get this little dark edge in the teeth over here. If it's white and shiny all the way from here to here, then your whole mouth becomes flat, so you've lost that nice rounding and that depth that you can get where your teeth recede inside the cheek or inside the mouth. Then also just be careful, don't make your teeth too white. Remember, white teeth is very unusual. Add that little bit of burnt sienna or yellow ochre, whatever you're seeing inside there. Add a bit of that color into it. It just makes it look more natural. So otherwise you'll find even false teeth there, they don't make yellow, they don't make white. They add a bit of yellow to the mix. Okay. Okay, today we're going to learn how to paint the ear, and we're also going to do the hair, but there's just a little bit of theory that I want to do, just a quick little 5-minute chat. What we're going to do, or what I want to teach you, is about light. You'll find that different times of the day your light is different. It's most obvious at night or late in the afternoon when you have a sunset. Then we know we've got oranges and reds and purples, right? But even during the day, the light, the color of the light is changing the whole time. From the morning, it starts off also orangey yellowish, and then it gets yellower and yellower, and eventually it starts becoming bluer and bluer until here around midday your sunlight is more of a bluish color. And then from midday it gradually starts yellowing down again until we hit sunset. So when you have that different lighting conditions, what happens is that your whole scene, everything gets infused with that sunlight color, right? So all your mixes will have that light color infused inside it. I'm going to show you a picture over here. Let's just get rid of that. Alrighty. So take a look over here. We've got a morning. You see how a bit of a yellowish tinge to it. Here's a midday photograph of our model again. So it's a lot more of a bluer look to it, eh? This one here is a photograph that I've taken at night. Now you get two different types of globes. Let's just wait till Dennis gets back to me there quickly. There we go. Okay, you get two different types of globes. You get one that they call like a daylight, which also gives you a blue light, and then you get the standard in like the incandescent lamp globes and stuff, which also give off a yellow light. So be careful of that, especially when you're painting as well. If you're using the one with the yellow, you'd find that even your mixes on your palette get infused with that color. So tomorrow morning when you look at it in the sunlight, all your mixes appear slightly yellow. So just be careful of that even when you're mixing your colors. Ideally what you'd have is one of the proper daylight globes when you're painting. Alright, now let's go over to our model. I sort of noticed last week that there seemed to be a bit of a consensus for his name to be Casper. Somebody suggested Casper, and we got a lot of yeses. So if you still agree with Casper, then let me know. Then we will officially christen him Casper today. And then my real model actually eventually arrived, so I'm pretty stoked. Pretty little lady there, and she's also in lack of a name. So let me know what we're going to call her. Alright, what we're going to chat about now is reflected light. So what happens is the objects around your subject, their colors get reflected back onto your subject. Now what I've done is I've got some different colored cards over here, which I'm going to hold up against or close to the model, and you'll be able to see that, hopefully we'll be able to see that reflected light. So if Dennis can zoom in on the face for us. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the card in as quickly as I can. Can you see the red suddenly appearing? Now it's gone, and there it is. Okay, what's important is to notice, where do you see that reflected light? Take a look at the highlights and you'll see there's absolutely no difference. They still look normal. We take the card away again. See that? Absolutely no difference. The difference comes in the shadows, and funny enough, in the darkest shadows. For example, take a look over here and over here. You'll notice that those darkest areas appear reddest. So what's actually happening here is the light is coming in, it's hitting my red card, and then it's bouncing back off the card onto our model. Now because the amount of light, or the intensity of the light bouncing off my card isn't nearly as bright as the actual sunlight itself, the highlights or the bright areas aren't affected at all, because the amount of light from the reflection is simply not strong enough. But now in the shadow areas, because there isn't much light there, now we're suddenly adding light to it. So you'll actually find that, maybe if I take it away and put it back, you can notice that the shadow actually becomes lighter, because now it's got more light in it in that area. And now because that light that's hitting in that shadow area is red or green or blue or whatever color is surrounding it, that red, green or blue color gets infused into your shadow area. I've got a few different colored cards here. So there's the red one. Zip him away and look at the green, and it's zip him away, and there's a yellow one. Can you see that? How your shadows all become infused with the color surrounding it. Now obviously this guy over here is spider white, so you really get an exaggerated difference in the color. So let's do it again with a bit more of a realistic color. So we'll put that over there, and I'll take it away, put it back, take it away. Can you see the difference? See, those same shadows are still becoming red with a red card, but it's obviously not quite as pronounced at the moment. Now obviously even this model over here, because she's plastic, she's a little bit more reflective than what your skin is. So when looking out for these little reflections in your subject that you're painting, just look out for it, because they're not always that obvious. Let's try some different colors. There's yellow, and oopsie, there's not the green. Let's try the green one again without dropping it this time. Okay, so there's the yellow, and there's the green. Yeah. I want to show you the green, so what I do is I rip the green one out the way, so there's still yellow. You can see it's way too early in the morning for me. Okay, so I think you sort of get the picture how your reflected light can influence the colors in your scene. Now just remember that it influences the shadow colors. Now there's something else that we need to just sort of clarify, which a lot of guys find that they get a little bit confused with, or that I find the guys get confused with. And that is the difference between a highlight, reflection, and reflected light. All three of them, Dennis is having a good giggle here, because all three of them lighten your subject, but they lighten in different ways, and they affect the actual picture or the whatever you're looking at in different ways. Your highlight is the brightest area from the sun, right? So let's say I've got a ball here and I've got my sun coming like this. Whatever's closest to the sun, to your light source, that area there will be your highlight. Everything further away from it is going to become darker and darker. So that's your highlight. So if I'm standing here and I'm looking at this bowl, that'll be the highlight. If I walk around it, then eventually I'm going to get to here where I don't even see the highlight anymore. Okay? So your highlight can't move. The only way it can move is if your sun actually moves, and then it lights up that area, then it lights up that area, then it lights up this area. You see what I'm saying? Okay? But now, if you have a shiny object which reflects, now what happens is, here's our sun. So there's our highlight because it's closest to the light source, right? Now you're standing and looking over here. So look what happens. Your light comes and it bounces off over there, bounces off over there, bounces off over there. Remember we chatted about that last week? So the light bounces off your object at different angles. Now when that light bounces off at exactly the correct angle, so that it points directly at you, you see that light source. You see a physical reflection of the light itself. Okay? So your highlight is still here, but your reflection is over there. So if I now move around and I go and stand over here, now I'm seeing this beam of light that's bouncing off the ball. So now suddenly my reflection looks like it's over here instead of here. So as you move around that object, your reflection is also going to move, but your highlight stays in the same place. Then we have reflected light. So now I've got remember my red card is sitting over here like this. Here comes the sun and it's bouncing off that card and it's lighting up the shadow areas over here on my ball. So again, because the light hasn't moved and because my card hasn't moved, I can stand anywhere. That same area will be lit up the same amount with the same amount of reflected light. So again, if I come and stand over here, I'm not going to see any reflected light because the reflected light is on this side. Does that make sense? So we've got highlights, reflections, and reflected light. And you have to just keep in mind what's the difference between those three. Now, why am I making such a point of telling you this? Because I find that when the guys are mixing their colors, they go and mix the reflection because they've confused that with the highlight. So that's a big mistake, because remember your reflected light is the color of the sun, or the color of the light source. So that's not necessarily the highlight color of the actual ball that you're looking at. So let's say I've got a red ball. The highlight isn't going to be the white or whatever from the sun, right? It's going to be a light red. So we have to be careful of that. Let me show you over here on the screen. Let's go there. Alrighty, over here. Okay, so here I've got an ear. Now let's take a look. All these shiny bits over here, those are reflections, right? So that's not your highlight. If we take a look, this area here is pointing directly towards the sun. So that area there is our highlight. So it's a highlight. There is sort of a mid-tone over here, and there's a shadow, right? So highlight, midtone, shadow. These shiny bits, they're the reflections. And then take a look here on the back of the ear. You've got a little bit of reflected light over there as well. I'm presuming it's bouncing off her bandana. So when I'm mixing my colors, I would mix 1, 2, 3, and then 4 for the reflected light. So I'm going to deal with my reflected light almost, you can think of it as its own separate color. Okay, now let's quickly zoom back over here. I just want to quickly show you the difference between, we've got two different types of light sources. You've got natural light and you've got artificial light, right? Now the difference between the two is that your sun is so massive compared to the earth and so far away that when the light reaches us, those beams of light are for all practical purposes parallel to each other. So what's going to happen then is it's going to influence the shape of our shadow. So what I've done is, here is a cylinder, and these parallel lines over here are the parallel beams of light coming in, hitting the cylinder. Here at the bottom you can see what the shadow looks like that the sunlight is going to cast on the table or whatever that cylinder is standing on. Here's one for a cone and there's one for a ball. Now let's take a look and see what happens when we've got an artificial light source, because the difference there is that artificial light source is obviously way closer to us, right? Now light travels in a straight line, right? And it also radiates out from the light source, almost like like the lines of the sun. Remember when you were a little kid, you used to draw the sun radiating out like that over there. So that's really what happens with your light. From the light source it radiates out like this. So when we've got artificial light, that radiating out effect affects our shadows a lot more than like when we've got the sun. So here we've got our single point light, we call it a single point light source, and that's what happens with those rays of light. So they're radiating out like that. Look what happens to our shadow. That's a big difference, right? So always bear in mind what type of light source that is lighting your model, because it can make a big difference to your shadows. Okay, let's take a look. We've got Lolita and Casper and Curly and another Casper, and we've got Romeo and Juliet. That's actually not a bad one. Now that we've got two. Zoom out back onto me, please. Yeah, Romeo and Juliet is also Sonny and Cher. Oh my word! I wonder if we're ever gonna get our model's name now that I've really added another one to the mix. All right. That's more than enough theory for one day. I think let's start painting. Okay, today we're going to paint the ear. We're going to start off now with painting the ear. Now, if you've been battling to do the mouth and the nose, those shadings there, then I recommend don't paint with today. The ear is the most complex part of the entire portrait, so you'd much rather go back and practice a few more mouths and a few more noses until you feel comfortable with those kind of shadings, because with the ear it's a lot more intricate, the shadings. Okay, so if you are battling, just make yourself a coffee, relax and just follow along so that you can at least just understand the process, and then when you feel you're ready and you're more confident with your shadings, then we'll tackle the ear. Okay, now the first thing we need to know is obviously what do we call each part of the ear, so that when we are chatting about it, we're on the same page. So let's look at that quickly. Alrighty, so this outside piece over here we call the helix. Then this inside little curl over here we call the antihelix. This little flap over here we call the tragus, and then over here we've got the antitragus, and then here we've got our ear lobe, and then this inside piece over here we call the concha. I have just sort of color coded them for you, so all this is in the manual. Helix, antihelix, tragus, antitragus, ear lobe, and concha. Okay. No, you actually pronounce it concha. Yes, you spell it concha, but I did look up. You spell it, or you say it concha. Quite bizarre. It's all these Greek, or what is it? It's Greek or Roman, or what? All these medical terms are quite bizarre. Latin, yeah, there's the language. Luckily, we don't have to speak that anymore. It's insane. Alrighty. So to mix my colors, like we chatted before, I've used a highlight. There was also a nice big area of mid-tone, so I used that. And then inside here, on the inside of the ear, we've got our shadow color. Then I've mixed the reflection as well. And then here we've got a shadow cast by the ear. I've mixed that color up as well. Okay, so there's my reference ear. And there's the ear we're going to paint. There are a few little things that we need to look out for when painting the ear, but we'll chat about that as we go along. And some baking paper. That over there, that's good. Don't you just love this baking paper? It really works like a charm, doesn't it? Okay, so again I've got my watercolor pencils that I've drawn on the back of the paper of my printout. And do that, and I can save myself some time by doing both at the same time. I'm going to give myself just an idea of the bandana. Again, that just helps you with the placing or the positioning of the ear. I specifically chose this picture with a bandana so that you don't have to go and do the hair and the ear all at exactly the same time. So you can do one. When I'm doing this, I always like to just make sure it's actually transferring to the back, otherwise you do all this drawing work and then you check yourself and then you say, oh dear, it hasn't transferred. What did you find was the biggest hassle that you've been having so far in the course? What have you been battling the most with? Just type it into the chat box and let's see if I can maybe answer it for you or help you out with that. Karen says she's having a hassle with the sound. Anybody else having a hassle with the sound? There we go. Yes, it should be. It's the one that you use in the kitchen. You line your baking pan with it so that your baking pan doesn't get so dirty. I want to make myself a little tab here again so that it's easier to keep my baking paper out the way. I don't think it's quite parchment paper. It's like I said, it's like a wax paper. Yeah, but us they just call it baking paper. But I would presume wax paper is roughly the same thing. Okay, we can get that out the way. Okay, let's go over to the palette. So what I've got here is I've got my shadow color, cast shadow color, midtone, and highlight. Now to get my reflection, I'm just going to take some of the highlight color and I'm going to add some white to it. Now, by the way, just to get these colors, I've used cadmium orange, French ultramarine, alizarin crimson, and white. Now, in an ideal world, you'd obviously be adding the actual light color to get your reflection, but I found more often than not you can just use white. If you find it's becoming a little bit too gray or dull, then just pop in a little bit of the sun color. Like if it was yellowish, then you'd add a touch of cadmium yellow into that. If it's a bluish light, just a touch of say French ultramarine into it, and that'll just get you to your reflection color. Alright, now when I'm painting, because this is such a complex creature, our ear, I try and sort of stick to a bit of a pattern. So I'd maybe do my helix, and then I'll do my anti-helix, and then the tragus, and then the anti-tragus, and then the earlobe. and then the conker. So it does mean cleaning your brush a little bit more, but if that's gonna make sure that you stay sort of on track and not get lost, then go for it, then do it. Now again, same as normal, I'm going to just look carefully and take a look, where do I see my basic colors and my basic places. So I've got, this color seems to be running along here. Actually all the way down to there. Do you want this over there? But now I've got my baking paper there. Alrighty, the director is telling me he wants to see, let's do that over there, he wants to see the ear reference over there so that you can see easier. Again, all I'll do is in between colors I'll just give my brush a quick little wipe. You could use burnt sienna. I just found the orange, I know from experience the orange and the French ultramarine give me a brown, a chocolatey brown, which was roughly the colors that I was seeing inside this ear. So that was the reason why I chose the orange instead of, say, burnt sienna. And I'm pretty sure you could get exactly the same colors using your burnt sienna. You'll notice that there's quite a lot of reflections in the ear. You see what I'm doing? I'm just adding those individual little areas of color in like that. Now, once you've been going for a little while, you'll notice that you can keep your wits about you a little bit easier. Then you can save yourself a lot of the mixing or the cleaning your brush time by popping in your correct colors, the correct places immediately. Now, as usual, I'm using my favorite brush, the soft full bit. If you find you get into these little areas, it's a little bit difficult to get in there, just go over and use your fine round. cast shadow over here. Because you don't have too many sharp or found lines to work with, when you do have a found line like this one over here, make sure you can see it. This cast shadow over here gives you the height of your ear of the face. Okay, Tony is asking, if the subject is an old person with lots of skin folds, is it wise to smooth them out and make them look younger? Tony, that question you have to ask the person that you're painting. Some people want you to do a little bit of reconstructive surgery and make them look a little bit younger. Other people don't. So rather just ask the person that you're painting. You say, look, do you want me to dump a few little wrinkles? Usually what they do is they'll quite happily tell you beforehand. If they know you're going to paint them, they'll quite happily tell you beforehand, oh, I hope you're going to take a few of the wrinkles away. And then you can just double check with them and make sure that they really do want you to take some of the wrinkles away. You'll find when you're doing this, it's after a while you sort of get into the groove of spotting these different little tonal values or differences in color and so on. Then it does become easier. Yeah, it does take a little bit of practice spotting them. The biggest problem though is usually losing the lines. So with your baking paper in hand, then you know you're safe over there. Always check yourself. Alrighty, let's get this reflection in here on the anti-helix. Bunks down over there. And then this reflection continues over there. Like that. And here we also have a little bit of a reflection over there. So we'll put some colour in there too. There's a bit of a reflection. I'm not going to paint the earring yet. We'll just make that reasonably flat. When you're painting yours, you're more than welcome to put the earring in. Alright, let's take a look. It's quite dark in there. Here are the conker. Okay, I've got most of my colors in place. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start blending them in. Let's just add that little corner over there so we can just frame that properly. I'm going to start blending them in, and then we'll fine-tune them as we go. That should be more than enough paint. Again, what I'll do is I'm going to clean my brush just on the kitchen towel, just to make sure that excess paint is off. Now I'll start with the helix, and then go to the anti-helix, and so on. Lightest little touch, because it's such small little areas, just the lightest little touch. Let's get rid of that line. If you find the one color is overpowering the other one, and your shadings are going to move too far, then stop, clean the brush, and pick up some of the paint that's disappearing. In other words, let's say this brown is disappearing and your reflection color is overpowering it. Then clean your brush, pick up some of this color over here. So that means you'll have basically more paint of the weaker paint. You'll have physically more of that on the brush, and that will help you to overpower the strength of the other one. It'll sort of help to balance them out. Now, believe it or not, this little blocking in is actually the most difficult part of this whole process. Simply because you have to keep your wits about you, because you've got all these lines. If you feel your brush is starting to get too loaded with the color, then stop. Just give it a good old wipe on the kitchen towel, the kitchen roll, just to get rid of that excess paint. Remember, you've already got paint there. You shouldn't really need much more paint at this point in time. But if you do, then go ahead, add it. Okay, now we can work our anti-helix. There's absolutely no pressure involved in just the softest, gentlest little touch. And all the time I'm also just keep referencing from my reference photo to try and make sure that my shadings don't run off in their own directions. That really does happen so quickly. Okay, Tony is saying, given how much skill and time is required to produce a brilliant portrait with an accurate likeness, it's no wonder that they're pricey. Yes, there is some skill involved, as you guys have been finding out so far. But the amount of time it takes is no longer really than painting other subjects, like let's say for example a still life. I think it's more a case of just the value attached to a portrait, because normally you wouldn't just sell a portrait. You're not going to go and put it this way, you're not going to go and buy just any old portrait of somebody you don't know. That's unlikely. It has to be really special before you do that. But if you've got a portrait of somebody that you know, then you're prepared to pay a premium for it. So, and obviously the guys know that. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's extra expensive as well, because you're paying for that emotional. You're paying the emotional price for the painting. Let's put a little bit of that down there. It seems to have a little bit of a shading over there. I've got myself well strapped in. Oh, okay. I just thought Dennis wanted to answer an acrylic question there. Okay. What's nice about this, the brush that I'm using, I can use it flat and give me nice broad shadings, and in an instant I can turn it like that and do absolute fine little detail work. And I think that's why it's my favorite brush, because it's so versatile. I'm now obviously just keeping the canvas in place. To get all these little roundings and things, if you need to turn your canvas, then go for it. I'm just keeping it in place and doing the acrobatics from my side, just to keep the image in perspective, or at the correct angle for you. But don't you be shy to turn your canvas while you're painting. That's quite a rush. The question of whether a portrait is actually at the end of the day good, very subjective, because for one person what we're doing here is pointless. They'll say, oh, why don't you just go and do a printout? And in certain situations I also say that. But sometimes you do want a likeness, a really good likeness. And other times you don't necessarily want a really good likeness. You just want to be able to recognize the person. It depends on the style that you're busy working in. Yes, and loose styles can look really good. You don't always have to make stuff look like a photograph. I know we all like that. We all tend to want to do things, make them look like a photograph the whole time, but really, it's not always necessary. Over here, I've got, let's just go over to the reference picture. Go over to the reference picture for me, please. Over here where your ear comes out and sort of almost starts protruding out from the face, see you've got a lost line over here, and then you'll gradually become or you'll actually quite quickly become a found line, a sharp edge. So do that on your painting as well. Start it off with by gently tapping it, just to give that lost edge. And that gives you that sudden coming out of the ear effect. Alrighty, keeping those guys in. Hasn't taken too long, has it? We're nearly done. Yeah, so what do we have then? About 40 minutes worth of painting. Okay, here we've got a lost line as your ear sort of just comes out of starts protruding up the face. So I'm going to soften that line up there. Last little bit of basic blending over here. Okay, Now that I've got this majority block in, now what you can do is just come back in with your smaller fine round brush like this, and then just do a little bit of fine tuning. For example, like on this edge over here, you'll see it's not a perfectly sound line. It's just got, because it curves in, you've got that little bit of a darkening before it picks up that reflection. So little fine tuning things like that. I'm not going to fine tune mine too much today. Obviously the fine tuning does take a while, but just look out for those little areas where you can fine tune. And then because you always, when you're blending like this, you always tend to lose your brightest bright and your darkest dark. Also just come back in and just re-establish those reflections. So what I'm actually going to do to really get my reflections good is I'm actually going to take my reflection color, and I'm actually going to add even more white to it, just to get those real bright little reflections over there, there, real brightest little points. I'll come back in and get them sorted. So look for places where you can complete the rounding. That's what I'm doing here now. Now is also a good time to keep checking yourself with your baking paper as well, just to make sure that you've got all your lines in the correct places. Your ear hasn't wandered off and become a big ear. Then to make sure that your ear lifts up off the face, make sure that this little shadow here is nice and dark, this cast shadow. Now often, depending on the direction of the light, you won't actually get a cast shadow. You won't really see it. But if you know it should be there, then put him in. Because without this cast shadow, your ear will look flat. Now our shadows always fade themselves out. You see now, I don't know if you could see it now, but as soon as I put this nice dark little shadow in, the whole ear lifted up off the face. From where I'm painting this, it is sort of acting a little bit, so it's perfectly easy for me to see exactly what you see. But if I look on the screen, it's looking good. here again, just a little bit of a dark edge, and that gives us that separation between the point at the back and the anti-helix. Hey guys, I'm happy with my ear. I'm going to leave it at that. If we have time, then I'll come back and I'll pop in the bandana and stuff. But there, I think the basics are there. Oh yes. Obviously, I haven't put in those last little reflections yet. So let's just quickly do that. This makes your ear look shiny, and that helps add that little extra realism. I've got a little bit of extra reflection over there. A bit of extra reflection over here. And see, this refining work doesn't make a big difference. You know, there's not suddenly major change to it. It just adds that little bit of refinement. That just makes your ear look just a little bit special. Yeah, Dennis is saying it gives you the twinkle in the eye. So, yeah, it gives you the twinkle in the ear. Remember, it's all these little light effects that really make a big difference between having something look just average and making it look special. So all we're doing is just creating light effects. So nice creating illusions the whole day. There we go. I think I'm going to call it a day on that ear. Okay guys, if there's any questions on the ear before we move on, now would be a really good time to ask them. Okay, Anya is saying, simply amazing the depth and three-dimensional quality you achieve from learning how to shade. That's all that is to it. Learning how to shade. The minute you learn to see your highlights, midtones and shadows, all those tonal values, and recognize them and know where to look out for them, that's sort of the big trick. Yes, yes. That's all you're doing. To create that whole illusion of depths and three-dimensional, all just to play on light. And to get those light effects, there's tonal values. Simple. Irene is asking, Dennis, would you do a class on acrylics, mediums and blending techniques? One of us will, somewhere along the line, we will do it, some acrylic stuff next year. So yeah, look out for that. We have got your acrylic guys in mind for next year. Okay, Anya is asking, do you need to leave an area blank to put in the highlight? You put in the midtone and then the highlight on top. You could leave a blank area. I'm presuming when you say highlight, you're talking about the actual reflection, or you're talking about the highlights and the midtones. Just clarify that. I'm presuming you're talking about the reflection. Sometimes you can put that reflection in straight away, and it works. But I like to come back and just, like I say, when you're blending, you lose that last little. It tends to mix with the other colors, and then you lose that last little bit of brightness in it. So I like to come back and just add that little last shine back in again. Honeysuckle says, I think I need a special class in shading. You've already had a special class in shading. Go and take a look at the tulip tutorial. That's all there is to it. Other than that, just practice, practice, practice. If you're battling to see your tonal values, then what you do is take a print and of your reference material and print it out on your, just change your printer settings to grayscale, so that you've got a color reference and you've got a grayscale reference. So the grayscale reference lets you see the lights and the darks. It gets rid of the color, which always confuses your eye. That'll help you see those tonal values. And from there, you know how to shade. It's just practice, 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 seeing those, spotting those often subtle little tonal differences. Tony saying, Dennis, do you teach Nolan all these skills? I'll let Dennis answer that one. Lillian is saying, one good thing about Colex is that they don't give me a headache. The oil fumes are hard on me. Yes, if you find that those it's usually not necessarily the oil itself, it's normally the terps and stuff that you're using with it. Those fumes, I find the terps especially gives me hay fever, so I have to be careful. So
I'd just like to mention something that I taught Nolan the 50%, the other 50% he's taught himself, and believe it or not, I also learned from Nolan. He's got other tricks up his sleeve that I didn't know of, and so the one hand washes the other hand.
Okay, I don't know if you guys heard Dennis's reply. If you didn't, just let me know. Alright guys, I think it seems like that's the majority of the questions for the year. If you do think of another question, just pop it in the chat box and I will answer it. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to painting the hair. Now, hair is actually a lot easier than what we think. That's why I knew I could just squeeze it in today. When you're painting the hair, the biggest mistake I find the guys make is that they try and paint every last little detail, every last strand of hair, and that's not how you paint hair. Let me show you how you do it. Oh yes, shame, poor Renoir, we mustn't forget about him. Let's go and take a look how he painted his ears. I found by looking at all the different Renoir paintings and stuff, all his older ones, he either had the model turned so much that you couldn't see the ear, or he painted the hair over the ear. So I think he for a long time battled to paint his ears, and that just said to me he wasn't quite confident with his shadings yet. As he went on though, he gradually, you'll start seeing the ears gradually popping up in his paintings. Now here's one of the sort of middle of his career's ears. You can see he's getting the hang of it, but look here, this little anti-helix is not quite right, is it? But later on, look at these lovely ears he was painting, absolutely perfect, getting all these little shadings right, the depth correct. There's the cast shadow from the ear, everything was beautiful. So you'll find that the later Renoir went on with his career, the more and more confident he got, and the more he was willing to paint the ear. Okay, so let's go to hair. So if we take a look at, say, this photograph over here, you see each individual little strand of hair like this. What you need to do to paint this is to simplify it. Now the easiest way to simplify something is to look at it through your eyelashes so that it all goes out of focus, and that gets rid of all the detail. So that's what I've done over here. I've blurred this whole picture, and now we've lost the detail. Now we can't see individual strands of hair anymore. So take a look, what can we see? We see shadings. Look at that. There's highlights gradually going darker. There's a darker area gradually getting lighter, but never as light as these two highlights. So in other words, what we're really getting is we're getting valleys and peaks. So here's our peaks. The peaks are catching the nice sunlight, and the valleys are the areas in between that are becoming darker. Now, why do we get all these valleys and peaks and things? If we go back to the in focus photograph, you'll see that the hair tends to sort of clump together. You see there? They form little clumps. I haven't quite found a reason why it does that, but your hair just somehow does that. Now, it's these little clumps that give you valleys and peaks. So, if that valley is out in front here, then it catches a highlight and you see that. If it's inside, you've got depth, then you see the shadow color. So when you're going to paint this first. Just a real rough, out of focus shading. What's important is that you get these little, the flow right. Just to get the directions of these valleys and peaks. Now obviously in 2 seconds this lady's turned, or the wind's blown, and her hair's a little bit different, so don't try and get them 100%. You know, doing the whole baking paper thing I don't think that's quite necessary here. Just often I even just eyeball my directions, because I know in 3 seconds those directions are going to be off. So if I can get them more or less right, then I'm happy, and from there I'm going to mix a highlight, mid-tone, shadow. Sometimes you find a few more colors, so depending on how the light is hitting your subject and whether they've colored their hair and stuff like that, you get all sorts of different colors in their hair. So if you see a few of those, then mix them as well. Like here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's sort of 4 colors there that I would go ahead and mix, and from there you can paint it. Then what you do is right at the end, once you've got that shading in, then we create the illusion that you can see each hair by just adding a few little strands of hair at specific places. And those specific places are usually, let's get back to our in focus one again. Here where the light is catching it, notice that the ones where the light's catching it, you can see those individual strands of hair. Then you'll also find those individual strands of hair that are over high contrast in areas like this. And the fly out hairs. You see over here? You've got those individual fly out hairs that are doing their own thing. So those fly out hairs there are also the ones that you need to put in to create that illusion of you can see every single strand of hair. Now when we do paint the hair, remember in oil painting we always start from the back and we work our way forward, right? So you'd need to paint in your background first and then the hair. Now what happens is, as you can see, like over here, you have little sky holes, little areas where the background, there's background sort of shining through in between the hairs. And that's why you have to paint your background first, is to get this overlapping right over here. So if you painted your background, it's easy to quickly pop in these individual hairs. But now imagine trying to squeeze in your background over that. It'd be crazy. So always paint in your background and paint it in further. I would, with this one over here, I'd paint my background in all the way to around here. Rather too far and bring your hair over it than too little. By the same token, with your face as well, you would bring your skin tones, because you're going to paint this first and then bring the hair over it, right? So you're going to bring this whole cheek and everything all the way up to here and start suggesting a neck before you even start painting the hair. Then you'll also find that your hair, especially with long hair, you get sort of a looking in effect over here. Because your hair is now blocking off the light that's hitting the face, and other way around as well, the light hitting the face is blocking off the light hitting the hair. So as you get that recession inside there in towards the back of the neck, it gets darker and darker and darker, so you often find yourself having a little bit of a lost line over there. So look out for that, because that creates that depth of the face to stop your face looking like a wig. Now I just want to see if I can find another example for you, because there's another thing that you'd also want to do, and that is, let's see our reference pictures if we can see it. No, it doesn't seem like you can quite see them here. You can get a bit of a feel. What happens is, because your hair's got height off the face itself, it throws a shadow on the scalp. So when you're painting your face itself, paint in these little shadow areas, anticipate those shadow areas and paint them in immediately, so that when you do come in with the hair, you've got those shadows roughly at the right places already. Now, because our hair is sort of reflective, you'll often find that those are ear references, no wonder I can't see shadows. There we go. Now because see your hair's throwing a shadow over there, so anticipate and look for and paint in those reflections while you're still painting the face itself. Then you can come back in when you've got your hair and you paint these things in. Now because they've got their shadows, that settles your hair onto the head, and it stops your hair looking like a wig. Now you'll also find that your hair is a little transparent, so if you've got a situation like this where the light is coming through here and the light is shining through the hair onto the face, that the hair color will also, again, it's a reflected light, so it'll infuse itself into the skin color. So look out for that while you're already painting the skin. Okay, so I think let's go ahead and let's actually paint. Let's paint this dude's hair over here. There we go. Okay, we're going to do this little study over here of this hair. So what am I going to do? I'm going to mix, let's see, 1, 2, 3, there seems to be sort of 4 distinct colors again here that I'm seeing. So I'm going to mix up these 4 colors. I'm just going to suggest a bit of a face and do a basic little background, and then we're going to put in the basic shapes, and then we'll come back in and we'll put in some detail. Nice to see our canvas is nearly full. Okay, so let's find. Here's my reference picture that we're going to work from. Again, I've just scratched on the back. Now what I will need to do is just change colors. I have pre-mixed these colors just to save us some time. So I'm going to just swap over these colors of my palette. I think I'll even just work from this other palette here. Give my brush a give my brush a wash. Okay, in the week, Pat was asking me to just show the consistency of the paint that I'm using. So let me do that quickly. Pat, what I've been doing is I use my paint straight out the tube. I find that the consistency of that is fine. I know a lot of people do like to add just that little bit of medium for a little bit more flow. I find I've got more control when my paint's just that tad thicker. So if you take your paint straight out the tube, maybe Dennis can just zoom in on the palette over here. Your paint straight out the tube, like this. Very difficult for me to really demonstrate it for you on a video. Much easier if you were here to see it, but unfortunately we don't have that luxury. But yeah, that's the consistency that I paint with. If I need to cover bigger areas, then I would start thinning it down. So in other words, I use medium, but I use it sparingly. Let's take him out the way. Now the colors that I've used here are, I've used yellow ochre, for my hair color. I've used yellow ochre, I've used raw umber, and then I've obviously used some white. And if I needed to dull the color down, I used a little bit of French ultramarine. For my skin tones, again I've used my alizarin crimson, French ultramarine, and I used my burnt sienna. I didn't do too much effort with the skin tones because those wasn't quite what we're painting. But those are the colors that I've used to mix these guys. Alright, so let's go and transfer our drawing. So what I'm going to do over here is just feel for where's the eyebrows and the eye. Then I'm going to look for these main little contrasts, and I'm going to just swish them in. Remember, all I'm really interested in is just getting a feel for the flow. How does that hair flow? There it comes around there, like that. There's a few little distinct clumps, so I can pop them in. That goes there, that goes there. There's a little flower here over there. Yeah, and I think that's more than enough drawing work. So now I'll just quickly pop in a little bit of skin color. Let's get our reference picture here. So let's see, here we've got a shadowy color, so I've taken my skin tone and I've just added a little bit of, zipped a little bit of the hair color and just on the brush. So I'm just doing a little rough mix here on the canvas. There's over there, and here also we've got some shadows over there. So I'm taking all this in further than what it needs to go. Okay. Valerie May says, shouldn't we be drawing the ear freehand? Isn't that sort of what it's all about, and isn't tracing cheating? No, not in my opinion. In the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a likeness, and part of getting a likeness is working accurately. For example, if I get the shape of somebody's nose wrong, or his ear or whatever wrong, then I'm going to lose that likeness. So obviously I'm not saying to you don't draw freehand. What I'm saying is it's certainly not cheating. What I'm doing is I'm using all the technology at my disposal to make it easier for me to create a correct likeness. So no, don't feel bad or guilty by tracing or anything like that. But of course, if you want to draw it freehand, yeah, go for it. It is great for eye-hand coordination. But because we're working from photographs and stuff here, and we've got all the things we need at our disposal to be able to do tracings and stuff, then yeah, trace. So what? I think Dennis will wholeheartedly agree with me. We're big lovers of technology. We use every little thing at our disposal to make our life easier.
The old masters used mirrors and lenses.
Yeah, that's right.
The tracing is exactly the same as what we do.
What Dennis is saying is all the old masters and stuff, they used lenses. As soon as they were developed, they used lenses and mirrors and all sorts of stuff themselves. So you don't need to feel guilty. It's quite normal. Yes, that's right. Claude is saying Leonardo used the camera obscura and the grids and all those things. Yes, of course, yes. I don't know, some bizarre dude at some university somewhere suddenly one day decided it's wrong when you're not allowed to use grids and everything must be drawn freehand and stuff like that. I don't know where that guy came from and how he managed to get everybody to believe that you must feel guilty if you use that stuff. It's rubbish. Everybody uses it. Why not? If you've got it, use it. You're crazy not to. But of course, like I keep saying, if you want to, then yeah, draw freehand, go for it. It's great practice. But if you're looking for a likeness, then don't feel you have to draw freehand. That's enough of a sermon for now. Now my face is roughly blocked in. That's good enough for me. I'm happy with that. So I've got my little shadow going on there, and you've got a feel for the eye with the positioning. And that's good enough. Okay, now let's paint in the background. So I'm going to take just say a little bit of sap green. Pop that down over there. Ben is bringing me a marshmallow. Thank you. Oh, it's my daughter bringing me a marshmallow. Okay. The sapgreen I've got is transparent, so I'm going to pop in just a little bit of white in there, just to bit of titanium white, just to get rid of that transparency there. Obviously my daughter thinks we need a break or a treat for working so hard. I don't know. That was good, much appreciated. Okay, so let's take a look. Here's my most outside little line over there. It's over here. So again, I'm just going to really roughly scrub it in, and I'll scrub it in past that line. In actual fact, I think I'm going to go over to a bristle brush. Here I've also got some color going past these little sky holes, so I'm looking at the sky holes. You see my full bit brush, because it's soft, you can't take this rough beating that I'm giving this bristle brush. So and I like my full bit, so I want it to last a long time. So that's why I'd rather go to the bristle brush. And I think I don't really want any lines or texture, so I'm just gonna just give him a few zaps like this, and that should be fine. Well, I think we should be far enough, and we've got our background blocked in. That was nice and quick, eh? Now let's paint some hair. Sticking with our thing of working from dark to light, I'm going to start with my darkest hair color, and I'm going to pop those colors in first, and then I'll gradually lighten up as I go along. So the way I do it is I look for these areas where I can see these dark colors on my reference picture. For example, over here. Now our hair is flowing in this direction, so when I get to this area over here, I'm going to put it in that chopping motion like that. Let's just make sure I'm at the right places over here. It seems to be around here. So I'm going to use chopping motion. Now see my full bit? I can use it broad or I can use it thin, right? So now I want to get a thin effect, so I'm going to use this thin edge the whole time to chop that in like this. Very quick and flowing. There it goes in that direction, almost like a bit of a flicking motion. And as I'm doing this, you can almost start to get a feel for the hair as I move along. Here it's got a nice little curve over there. There's a few dark hairs running down that way. Our main mission at this stage is to get this canvas covered. Just correct places at the correct places, so on correct colors at the correct places. So that should do the trick there. Now we can move over to a lighter version. And let's pop some of them in the places I see them. I see them around there and a little bit around here as well. Yeah, the tail curls around like this. Constantly picking up new paint to make sure the brush stays quite loaded. Okay, now we can go to an even lighter one. And now you can see how rough and quick I'm working. So just by doing that, it's automatically, these colors are automatically fading into each other because I'm not being careful about where they fit. This is one of those times when you can hold your brush at right at the back of the handle like this. Because you actually don't want to work that accurate. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of this in now. Let's go over to our lighter one. And you can see as I go along, my canvas is gradually filling up. Less and less gaps. In actual fact, when I get to this stage here, when I'm working sort of with my last few colors, my lightest and stuff, then I'll be a little bit more careful to make sure that I am actually getting rid of those last few gaps. on the canvas, so that by the time I'm done with this last color here, my canvas is actually full. Don't know if you guys noticed, we've got a new chair, so it really feels like I'm sitting in a racing seat at the moment. Very comfortable. Are you starting to get a feel for the hair here already? Not so difficult at this stage, eh? Oh, it's pretty easy. There, like that. And let's see, there are a few little gaps here which I feel would rather be dark. There. And then I'll just come back in and just, often you don't even need to have any paint on your brush, you can just cover up those last few little dabs and dashes of canvas that are still shining through there. Just to make sure he's neat, without now going undoing all your hard work. Claude says Da Vinci called. He wants his what back? He wants his pantograph back. So Claude, does that mean you're on your way to bed now? If it is, have a great evening. But you couldn't hang on for 2 minutes, because then I'm finished with the hair. Yeah, I know, but last week when he said that, he was on his way to bed. So when Renwa wanted his easel back, Tony wants to know if he can have a marshmallow. You'll have to ask my daughter. Okay, Anya's asking, what about a baby's fine hair, where we can see the scalp? What type of brush, and any other advice? What you would do with a baby's hair is you would just suggest. Alright, Dennis, I need you to go back to my palette, please. What you do with a baby's hair is, because it's so thin and fine, you don't necessarily really see the hair. You would just sort of just suggest it by adding just a I think, yeah, sorry, I'm going to pick up a little bit over here, and I'm actually going to do it on the face just to show you. Go back to the canvas, please. Very little bit of paint, and you're just going to put some paint down, get the worst off again, and then just gently brush over it. And that's all you're going to do to get that little bit of that fine see-through hair effect. Okay, now I want to put in those detail work. So what we're going to do is on our palette, I'm going to take some medium. Now, if you're using a thicker medium like the liquid, then what you need to do is you'd have to go and make physical mixes. What I usually do is I just put a whole big dollop of medium down there like that, And now I'm going to use my rigger brush. Now the rigger brush looks like this. Can you see that? Just underneath the palette. Just getting that Dennis to, there we go, he's found it. Okay, so we've got nice long bristles. Now these long bristles like this can hold a lot of paint. So on my towel or on my palette, I'm going to first roll it in the medium, and then I'll roll it inside my paint like that. What I'm looking for is a nice watery consistency. It must be able to flow like an ink. So if you haven't got that nice inky consistency, then you know you're going to battle to paint these hairs. So now I'm loading the whole length of the brush. And I'll just tap it like that just to get rid of that initial little thick blob that sort of tends to run down to the end. Now we'll go over to our canvas and we'll just stab in a few of these little highlight hairs. So what we're doing now is we're looking for places where we can create contrast, like over here. Now again, remember, we don't want to paint in every hair, so don't get carried away with this, just suggest enough. And in fact, I think I might even use an even lighter one, so I'll just pick up some white and add it to the mix, to this little lighter one here. Keep adjusting my paint to make sure it remains at a watery consistency. And now again, keep to the flow of your hair. If it's in an area where the hair is generally darker, then go ahead and use a darker version. If it's in an area where it's lighter and you need a bit more contrast, then add more white or whatever you need to highlight that color. It's fine. Get these little fly out hairs going here. Here's some nice ones over here. Yeah, I'm really enjoying my new chair. You better hope I don't get too relaxed and fall asleep on you, eh? I promise that won't happen. Okay, let's get a few more over here. So now I'm using, because I'm in a darker area, and I don't want quite as bright, so I've now used a sort of my second lightest color. And at some places I may even come back in just with an odd little dark one, just to make sure. So I'm sort of, you can almost say I'm painting negatively. I'm using the darker color to add the gaps in between the hairs, like in areas. Maybe if I do that, can you see better on the camera now? Okay. So for example over here, so painting an odd little suppose you can call it a gap. Here we're definitely going to have an odd little fly out here coming out over there, and see one over there. And there we go. Hair finished. It was as easy as that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you just the ones that I did for the manual, which are obviously a little bit more refined. How are we doing for time? Sure, just made it in time today. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go there. So there's my ear where I added in the bandana, and I just use a few little squiggle lines to suggest the hair. And then on the hair side of things, you can also just take a look at the fly out hairs. And just that little suggestion of detail. What I did do there is I did paint in just the eye to help with the placement a little bit better. Okay, Anya is asking me, do I usually paint my hair wet on wet? Anya, no. What I'd normally do is I would paint in those basic shapes, and then I'd leave it to dry, and then these last little highlights, the detail work, I would come back in and I'd paint that detail work. I'd paint that in last, or once it's dry. It's much easier that way. Obviously I don't have that luxury here, so I have to paint it in straight away. But in an ideal world, I would leave it to dry first. Much easier, because then you don't have all that mixing and stuff going on while you're painting. Okay, Honeysuckle says, I think it's easier to the hair and not the ear. Yes, the hair is a lot easier than the ear, because the ear is that fine shadings. So and you can see how quick it went. It was really easy, really easy. Let's go and have a quick look over here. I just want to look on my notes, guys, just to make sure we've covered everything. Alrighty, let's go and take a look at how Renoir did with his hair. So here I've got a little girl. Let's see if I can get a little bit more of her in. Yeah, there we go. Okay, what you need to realize is when you're painting your hair is not the focal point. In actual fact, your hair is starting to move quite a way away from the focal point of your portrait. Because remember, we chatted about it last week, your focal point is the eyes, right? So as we move away from our focal point, we don't want those areas to draw as much attention. So when you're doing your hair, you generally not tend to try and paint too much detail into it, and just suggest some details. Now let's take a look. Renoir did exactly the same thing. See, he's just got these masses, a real quick block it in. There's no detail at all. and then he's come back in with a fine brush and he's added that little bit of detail exactly the same way as what we've been doing here today. Look, there he's got a few fly out hairs over there, and over there is a real rough one. There's a rough one. If I look at this painting over here, it seems like he didn't use the same brush as me. I think he used more like a bit of even a bigger hardware brush. That's that type of brush to paint his hair. Real quick and rough. But here where it's necessary, here by the focal point, you can see he's put in a lot of effort to get lots of detail. So don't try and overdo your hair, guys. You don't want your hair to steal the show. Okay, in your manual I've given you guys another extra 47 pages this week, so don't say I never spoiled you. Here's the link. Let me paste that into the chat box quickly. So there's the link. It's about a 25 meg download, so it's not quite as heavy as last week. Okay, you can zoom out for me, please. So, but it is still 25 megs. I will email everybody the link as well. If you do have any hassles, like I know Val was having some hassles because of her internet connection, just let me know. Just PM me on the forum, and I'll split it up into pieces. It makes it easier for you to download. Not a problem. Okay, let's have a quick look, as I know we are on time now, and I'm very conscious of people's time and schedules, so I don't want to go over. Let's see if there's a few last questions. Anya says she's enjoyed the class. Well, thank you, Anya. I enjoyed presenting it to you. Let's take a look. Lyndon says the same. He's enjoyed the class. Lillian is asking, would you explain patavalene, thin paint for underpainting, out of tube for on top, or vice versa? No, Lillian. Patavalene means your top layer of paint must have more oil in it, because you want your top layer of paint to remain more flexible than the under layer, the layer of paint on the underside. Otherwise you get cracking. So in other words, you would tend to use you'd start off with straight out the tube with as little oil in as possible, and then after that you'd gradually add more and more oil onto the layers above it to make sure that they remain more flexible than the layer underneath. In an ideal world, you would leave your underlayer to dry completely before you even paint anything over the top. Again, it's just to avoid that cracking. If you paint over a layer of paint that isn't quite dry yet, as your paint dries, it expands and contracts. So if you've got a dry layer of paint lying on top of a wet layer of paint, and this bottom layer is expanding and contracting like this, then what's going to happen? This hasn't got any give in it, and it cracks. So that's why we add extra fat, in other words extra oil, into our layers on top, and that keeps it more flexible and stops the cracking. Tony saying, my new ink cartridges are at the ready. I hope so, because the manual's at 267 pages. I'm sure your ink bill costs more than the course already. Okay, any last question, guys? I'll just give it I know there can be up to a 30-second delay between what we're doing here and what you're seeing, so I'll give it a good just a few seconds to make sure everybody's had a chance to type, so that I don't say goodbye and then 10 questions suddenly pop up. Next week, let's take a look. What are we going to be doing next week? Next week we're doing cheeks, chin, forehead and neck. So in other words, we've done all the most prominent features of the face. So next week we'll do those little in-between bits where on most portrait courses the guys leave out, but there's still important things that we need to know about each to get them right, and to get all your different features on your face to tie together. So it's really getting to the business end now, some really good stuff. So next week we're going to look at that, and then yeah, the week after that, it's one full-on portrait. That should be great fun. Let's take a look and see if there's any questions. Okay, everybody's got the link for the handout. Kugi, saying she never receives any emails. Let me just have a quick double check here. I've got the same email address as what you're giving me now in the chat box. So what I suggest you need to do is either, first of all, go and check your spam filter, your spam folder, and make sure emails aren't getting stuck over there. If it's not there, then you need to just chat to your service provider. Sometimes what they do is they block the emails from websites because of all the spam and stuff. So it's quite possible that ours could then be blocked. So you just need to let them know that our email address, anything from @paintbasket, is okay to receive. Then they can let it through. So I don't know why they do it, that they have spam filters on their side, because now it's all double work. Yeah, I've got a few guys saying that they appreciate the handouts. Yeah, I know you do, that's why I make them. If you didn't appreciate them, I wouldn't put in the effort. It's a two-way street. The more you support us, the more we can support you back. Simple as that. Always got to be a win-win. Lou's enjoyed the class. That's wonderful. Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing some acrylic stuff next year, because I know even though the techniques are the same, it's not always easy to get that translation without physically seeing it. So we'll do some acrylic stuff next year. Lots of watercolor. Dennis has got his mop brushes and his buckets of water all at the ready already. We're just waiting for everybody to get back from holidays. And he's got reams and reams and reams of huge canvas papers, and everything is all ready to go. Tony's asking if we'd consider a caricature tutorial class sometime. I've never drawn caricatures. That's not my forte. Maybe, I know Dennis has done some, so maybe he'll be prepared to do one. It'll probably be in pencil. Hey, what? Let's see what Uncle Dennis says.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I've done this portraiture a little bit out of my way, but we could work up something like that in the future.
Yeah, I think Dennis is sort of saying the same thing that I would have said. It's a little bit out of our comfort zone at this stage. We're not really into the caricature thing, but when we get a gap, then we will go and do the learning, and then we'll pass that learning on to you guys. How does that sound? Can't promise when it'll be though. You know that whole thing of famous last words? Okay guys, I'm seeing a whole bunch of thank yous and everything, so no real new questions. So I think let's call it a day. I don't want to go too much overtime in case I'm intruding into somebody else's appointment times, or if somebody's busting to go to the loo or go hit the sack. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great fun painting the ear and the hair. We'll see you next week for the chin and the nose and cheek and all those little finer details. Your homework for this week is at the end of your manual. There's quite a few references of the ears. Do as many as you can, because like I say, practice makes perfect. And the same with the hair. Do at least one hair study. From my side and from Dennis's side, cheerio. We'll see you next week.
Paintbasket TV.